Hello everyone, today I want to talk about why I find hacks or modifications of existing products on the market particularly great. So let's get started right away. Let's go.
Smart home maker off the beat. Innovation at your feet. Build it up, don't complicate. Home solutions, you're the mate.
Why do I find hacks or modifications of existing products so cool? Well, for one thing, you can of course approach a DIY project by starting completely from scratch. But that takes quite a long time, because you really have to think of everything yourself, build everything yourself, and develop everything yourself. And if you have an existing product and build on top of it, then you already have a very good foundation and can make progress much faster. Besides, it's often the case that there are already really good products where you think they're actually great, I like the product, but I'm missing some feature or some special aspect, and I'd like to add that myself. And then, of course, it's truly great if you can just grab that existing product and thoughtfully turn it into an even better, more refined one. And when you make such a significant modification to an already existing product, you can indeed create something truly special, something completely unique and absolutely distinctive. And then you will have a product that no one else possesses. Sometimes it can also simply be that an existing product is remarkably cheap. So incredibly cheap that you couldn't even possibly make it yourself for that incredibly low price. That can also be a very good reason to use it as a perfect starting point to create an even better and more refined product. And for me, as a dedicated smart home content creator, it's of course also really cool when I develop such interesting projects and can then happily share them with all of you in the wonderful community. What examples do I have here? What kinds of modifications have I implemented so far? Well, actually, I've implemented quite a lot, but a few examples that I especially want to highlight. One example is the Toniebox. For me, the Toniebox is a product that's actually really cool. It's designed to be very child-friendly, but from my point of view, it has some weaknesses. A few examples of these weaknesses are, for one, that you can't, at least I haven't figured out how, you can't really see the battery status as a percentage, not even in the app, which in my opinion is really not very practical because you never really know when the battery is going to run out. When it does eventually run out, there's also absolutely no way to extend the battery life, like adding an external extension so you could, for example, connect a portable power bank or something very similar to it. That too, in my opinion, is really a weakness because especially on longer trips or car rides, you quickly reach the limits of the Toniebox's battery, and it would of course be great if you could just easily extend the battery with a power bank or something like that to get a bit more power out of it and keep the kids from screaming. And for me, one of the biggest weaknesses is this headphone jack on top of the Toniebox, and that's also what my modification is about, because I've really experienced some pain with this headphone jack a few times since there's a tiny micro switch inside and it's gotten stuck a couple of times already. And then that leads to the Toniebox only working with headphones and not with the speakers anymore at all. Because this little switch causes it to switch to the speakers, and if it's pressed down all the time, then nothing works with the speakers anymore. And of course that's really annoying for the kids because they don't understand it at all. They just put a Toniebox on and expect it to start, and the sound does come, but only through the headphone jack. And if you don't have any headphones plugged in, then that's obviously a problem. And yeah, this headphone jack has a few more disadvantages for me because I think a device that's meant for small children simply shouldn't be used with headphones. I mean, of course with headphones, but not with wired headphones. And there are many reasons for that. One significant reason is that, in my opinion, such headphones do indeed pose a very real safety risk because there's a cable. Someone could potentially wrap it around their neck or whatever, or someone could quite easily trip over it. And we might not always have just one child who is already a certain age. There may also be younger children in the household, and then it's simply important to have a safe solution, and I just never find a cable to be a great option. Furthermore, such a cable really restricts your freedom of movement because you can't really move freely around the room or do anything. You're basically tethered to the device. Either I have to carry the device around with me all the time, or my range of movement is just limited. So I wanted to find a solution for that. There are also some simple and effective solutions for this, like plugging a small dongle into the existing headphone jack, which is typically battery powered and reliably sends out a Bluetooth signal. Then I can easily connect that to my preferred headphones, and in this ingenious way, I've successfully retrofitted Bluetooth capabilities. However, such a dongle that I have to plug in is of course also prone to errors because the same thing can happen. Just like I mentioned earlier with the headphone jack, that this little switch can get stuck. But it can also happen that you forget the dongle somewhere, especially when traveling or something like that. And then, of course, there's a lot of fuss, and that's obviously not good either. So from my point of view, that's not a particularly good solution either. And that's why I looked for a way to really retrofit Bluetooth natively, so to speak. I found something for that, and then I basically recreated it myself. It wasn't that easy. You really have to dig deep into the Toniebox and even solder onto the circuit board. And now I always have the convenient option to simply use the Toniebox with wireless headphones. The children really love it, and for me, it offers a great many advantages. I also made a little helpful tutorial where I clearly show how I successfully modified it. Another excellent example I would like to thoroughly explain and elaborate upon is my recent modification of the small yet very interesting IKEA Vindriktning device. This is a compact and simple device that is merely connected to the electrical power outlet with a single cable. For instance, it's a really straightforward setup. And this little device only has a prominent LED strip on the front, and this particular LED strip lights up in a vibrant red, a clear yellow, or a bright green, simply indicating how good the air quality in the room actually is. In fact, it's just a very precise fine dust measuring device. That means it precisely measures fine dust particles, and if the concentration becomes too high, it clearly shows yellow or even red. Then you will know you might need to take some action, like ventilate the area or whatever is necessary, to effectively improve the air quality once again. But this sensor is simply encapsulated on its own. It's not smart in any way or anything like that. It can't be integrated into a smart home system. And yes, that's why it's basically just a visual indicator that you can place somewhere in the room. That's also why this sensor or device is really inexpensive. And for that reason, in my view, it's an ideal starting point for a hack like this. So basically, I installed an ESP32 board into this little box. Specifically, it is a D1 Mini, and I have successfully connected it to the main board, so to speak, and I have also carefully installed a CO2 sensor, which is now fully operational. And with this modification, I can now, on the one hand, use this ESP32, on which I flashed ESP Home, to establish a connection to Home Assistant. I didn't just connect the ESP32 to the fine dust sensor, but also to the built-in light sensor, because inside this very little box, there's also a highly sensitive light sensor, which is specifically used to automatically adjust the brightness of the LED strip, depending on precisely how bright the room currently is. That way, when it's quite dark, the light isn't so glaring or harsh. And of course, you can also make use of this light sensor, and I integrated it into Home Assistant as well. So you can use it, for example, to trigger other automations. Like if you say it's dark in the room, turn on certain lights or something similar. And you also have the option to add more features if you want. In this case, I have also added a carbon dioxide sensor, so now I can measure not only fine dust but also carbon dioxide levels, which really gives me a good indication of the air quality in my room. It's now set up here in my office, and if I notice that the air quality isn't good enough, I can get notified, for example, via push notification or something similar, and then I can quickly air out the room or do something similar. That's actually quite a nice feature. But you can also add even more sensors. For example, you could also add a temperature sensor or anything else you can think of, as long as it fits into the case, of course. And then you have a small device with a really nice case that can stand in the room, serving a bit as a decorative element, and at the same time delivers a whole lot of relevant information to your smart home. And that's why I think it's a really cool modification. Yes, the third small modification I want to talk about today is how I successfully retrofitted a vehicle sensor to my Wallbox, so to speak. Specifically, it's about a Wallbox that's mounted outside on the wall, and it's located right in front of my garage, so when I park my car in front of the garage, I can charge it directly at the Wallbox. But in this specific case, when I'm standing right out there, it's certainly not ideal if the garage door opens, because I currently have a swing door, and such a swing door can easily end up hitting the car, potentially causing some damage. This can happen both when the door is being opened and when it's being closed. And yes, I've actually had this particular situation happen, or almost happen, several distinct times with various different cars, and I truly did not like that experience at all. So I started looking for a solution. And the solution for me was that I wanted to have a way to identify whether a vehicle is parked there or not. So now I have simply and effectively attached a small, custom-designed 3D printed part to my existing Wallbox, which is located down there. I meticulously designed it myself so that it fits absolutely perfectly and securely into the intricate grooves at the very bottom of the wall box, thereby allowing me to easily and precisely attach an ultrasonic sensor. This particular ultrasonic sensor is completely waterproof, and I have connected it to a very small ESP32 development board, which is currently running ESP Home. Now it helps me identify whether a car is parked in front of the garage or not, and I basically linked that to my garage door control system. That means the garage door or the garage door control was already integrated into Home Assistant anyway. Now I have combined them, so now I have a combined switch. This switch now also has the functionality to check whether a car is parked in front of the garage, and only then does it allow opening or closing. And if you try to open or close it when a car is in front of the garage door, then I get a push notification telling me that unfortunately the action couldn't be performed because a car is in front of the garage. That's definitely a much better solution than having the garage door slam into my car with a bang. And in that respect, it's also a really nice modification of the Wallbox, which was already there anyway, now serving as a base, in this case, just for this additional feature. So those were just a few examples. I've made a lot of modifications in my house here. But I'm also really interested to hear what kinds of hacks or modifications you've personally made to your smart home products, or what ideas you might actually have. What would truly appeal to you in your opinion? What would you consider a cool modification? Please let me know, because if I find your ideas to be really interesting and compelling, I could definitely see myself building such a valuable solution and making it readily available to the wider community by creating a comprehensive tutorial. For the 3 specific examples I just mentioned in this podcast, I will most definitely link the detailed videos I personally made for each of them in the comprehensive show notes section. See you next time. Bye.